I bought, a couple of them. One of them was I Wonder Why by Dion and the Belmonts. When that came out, see, living in New Haven, we had at least, I think, one at the time. This is late 50s. I Wonder Why it was 58, I think. But we had two huge ones coming out of New York, WMGM and WINS, Jack Lacey and Alan Freed. I just listened to the countdown. We couldn't wait to get home. Every week they'd have the top 40 countdown of what was jumping up and what was coming down. I just loved it. I thought it was very exciting. Here, I Wonder Why one day, and I didn't know the term rotation then as far as applying it to airplay. Obviously, it was unlimited rotation. And because, a lot of times they still don't say who the artist or what the song is, and they didn't. And I just thought it was great. So I waited and waited and went, boy, and I wait. And finally it came on again. And, it got some play. Years later, and I got the record. That and right around the same time, a Purple People Eater. I went to number one in 2 weeks. And, and then as far as albums, I'd mow lawns, and I had a TV guide route. To save up some money, I'd heard headphones. We just recently gotten a stereo, and my father bought it in 1960. And then I heard at the local hi-fi store, headphones. And I thought I died and gone to heaven. Headphones. So I remember they were $15, which was a fair amount of money then, and I had to save up to get those. But records as well. I mowed a lot of lawns and things, and I bought a Benny Goodman compilation on Brunswick and a couple of other odds and ends, to answer your question. But Dion and the Belmonts, I Wonder Why was not one of their bigger hits. I learned much later. In 1970, this fabulous book came out called The Miles Chart Display that had graphs of every record that ever made the Hot 100 from 55 until this was published. And I looked through a couple of, and on I Wonder Why, I think went to 24, which was not a huge hit. And that could explain why I didn't hear it a great deal. Of course, I grew up listening to whatever you wanted to call it at the time, the Hit Parade, Top 40, which for the first half of the 50s was, a little more on the pop side. And I liked a whole lot, I still do. That's an era that really gets overlooked on radio today. You just rarely hear. And there's a lot of good stuff from the first, as far as I'm concerned. But I remember with friends and all, we had, so I would have been around 9 in 1955, 8 going on 9, and then the following year 9 going on 10 into 56. Pardon me. We had friends who would show up with some records that they had gotten. And I remember, and I liked them a lot. One of them was I Want You to Be My Girl, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. He had At My Front Door by the Eldorados, Little Girl of Mine by the Cleftones. I really liked that a lot. And so I was listening to him, and I thought it was different, but I really liked it. I didn't know at the time what was going on. If a black group or a black writer, an artist / writer would write a catchy song, it wouldn't get played on regular top 40 radio. It would get covered. So, of course, Sincerely and Shaboom and any number of them were covered by the white artists. And I didn't know. I never heard the originals until years later. But these I did. The ones I just mentioned, Little Girl of Mine, I Want You to Be My Girl, At My Front Door, I Hear You Knockin'. We had friends who had them, and then I pestered my folks. And I remember, it was 56? I think 56. I didn't know at the time, of course I was only 8 or 9, that a lot of these things that were being done by Fats Domino and the Platters, they were old standards that were being redone, like Blueberry Hill and My Prayer and Twilight Time, and a lot of them. Well, one of them was When My Dreamboat Comes Home. Fats Domino. I don't know if you're familiar with that, his version of it. The sax solo really got me. I love it to this day. And I had to have it. And of course, my mother's saying, well, Fats Domino, I don't know, he's a rock and roller. In so many words, I'm paraphrasing. And I'd have to hear this, because obviously I didn't know at the time, but I'm sure the parents were all talking with one another. What's going on? What's this stuff we're hearing? And I remember we went to a record store in East Haven, and because we lived in New Haven, and went to East Haven, Connecticut, and the fellow put it on, and he goes, "When my dream boat," and "Come home." And I'm waiting for the sax solo. I just love the sax solo. And my mother listens to it, and she says, "Well, if you want it." And she said, it's the first time I'd ever heard the term murder applied to someone's interpretation of a song. Because she said, this is an old song, Richard, and he murders it. Which actually he does. I like the arrangement more than the way he sings it. But dream no more, we don't, But we got it. And, and then, of course, the buzz was going on in 56 about Elvis Presley. And I remember Jonesy next door. We had Joneses next door. We had to keep up with them, too. And he was going on about Elvis Presley. And then, of course, you heard it. Heartbreak Hotel and all those early Elvis records. I mean, it wasn't until years later that I'd heard That's All Right and Mystery Train and all that. But, of course, Heartbreak Hotel and then all the ones that followed. And they're still my favorite Elvis records. All the early ones. I just thought they were the end. And then there was Sitting in the Balcony. A whole lot of them. Not Elvis, but other ones. It's like the first time you hear yourself on the radio. I did a little thing in 1963, not long before we moved. Oh, God, maybe late 62, where a local group went and recorded a couple of tunes in New York. And we went to New York and we cut these two songs, Mary Ann and Write Me a Letter. And it had like a Jerry Lee Lewis, the gliss. Please write me a letter. Brrr. And, well, damn, it didn't become a local hit. Just as we were leaving. But still, I got to hear it on the radio. And to hear yourself going, brrr, or whatever you're doing. If you're playing chopsticks, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a fabulous feeling. And, then, of course, we heard Ticket on a few stations around here. I mean, not on continuous play, but we heard it. And then to see yourself bubbling under. Because in Billboard, the magazine or newspaper, whatever they call it, it's they have the bubbling under the Hot 100. Well, of course, we subscribed to Billboard. We followed it religiously before we ever were signed with a record. We just loved to see what was going on. And, one day it shows up, and they should have let us know it, because you learn the previous Wednesday, because Billboard and Cashbox and all come up Monday. You learn what your chart position is going to be, but I guess no one was paying much attention to A&M, because they didn't tell us that we were going to be bubbling. We just happened to see it that particular Monday. Well, we went bananas, Showed up. We're bubbling. I don't know if you ever saw a film that Tom Hanks did called That Thing You Do. Oh, they captured what it's like to hear yourself on the radio. And of course they had the billboard there and they're jumping up and down, and there's just nothing like it. To think that something you've done was not only going out over the airwaves, but even if it's 112, well, that means, it's ahead of 113. And that's for the country. That's a big deal. We were doing a lot of college towns. And, at the time, getting from one to the next by commercial travel, it was murder. You'd have to get up before the sun came up to get a connection from here to there. And so finally, we leased a couple of Learjets. And it made it much easier. You could just walk right into your own leased plane, and then it could put down into a smaller airport. It was cost prohibitive. We didn't make much money, if any, on those tours with the nut that we had to take care of and Learjets, but at least we got a little more rest. Bettis was along for one of them, at least one of them, probably more than one, but he was looking out of the window, he told me later, of a Lear. And that's when he got the idea of coming up with a lyric called Top of the World. And then I saw it. And so maybe in a way, it was good that we leased those, because it led to that song, didn't it? Top of the World not becoming an instant hit was, well, it was my decision. It was my fault. We finished it. It was a bear to record. That song may sound simple. It's not simple. It's rangy. It takes a good lungful to get through each phrase, certain phrases, and it just was very difficult to make compared to some other ones. But nevertheless, when it was done, all of us kind of listened back to it and thought, this is all of us now. Not one person around us or at the label, everyone thought, well, pleasant little album cut. And so, you know, some of the DJs went out and the promotional copies and all of that. And came out in June of '72, and we're about ready to set off on our summer tour. So we were asked to do an interview with a DJ at one of the markets we were going to play, somewhere in Florida. And so the fellow's on the phone, and he said, I have the new album here. And he said, what's the new single? I said, it's Goodbye to Love, because it's going to take some time. It preceded the album. He said, why not Top of the World? I remember that. It was the first time at Top of the World. Then a review came in, because that's a good album. There are a lot of good songs in that album. The fellow took it, who reviewed it track by track, and said, it got to Top of the World. It's the second thing on there. He said, in so many words, by far the strongest song on the album at the Top of the World. Then we go to Houston. That was our first concert of that tour. And we did put it in the show. It's a good thing. And we said, here's a tune from our new album, a song for you. It's called Top of the World. A cheer came out of our usually reserved audience. And what the hell's going on here? And we still didn't see the writing on the wall. And then we met Lynn Anderson not too much later, and she said how much she liked A Song for You, the album, and that they were going to be doing Top of the World. Out it comes. It's a clone of our record. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's pretty much the same record. Goes to #2 country, starts to cross over pop. Gets released in Japan. They call it as a single in Japan. Goes gold. I mean, well, we obviously missed something here. So we're working Vegas in right around Labor Day, usually the end of summer into Labor Day. '72. We're at the Riviera. By now, it's coming out as a single. It's coming out. And, well, we get the news that he was either vice president by then. No, I think he was still vice president of the label, was flying in to see us in Vegas. And in between shows, he says to us, I understand. And we announced it, by the way, in our act. We said, this is our new single. So the local radio station went on it like that. So that night, in between shows, the vice president, I heard you're putting out Top of the World, and said, yes, we are. We were obviously wrong about this. And he said, I really want to urge you against it. He said, I remember this. He said, I think it'll get some airplay, but you've really, the DJs, the program directors don't like you putting out so many songs from one album, which is true. And but of course, the real reason was that he didn't think it was going to be a hit. No one at the label, and I can't blame them. I didn't either. But by now at least, I thought I had enough sense, and I did. Well, to realize from all around the world and the covers and everything that was going on, that there was something here that we maybe didn't see. And he really kind of lobbied us. And so we said, okay, we won't put it out. Then we got a call from the radio station not too long afterwards. So wait a minute, we went on this, and you said it was going to be a single. And so we had to tell him, it's false alarm. But then it didn't stop. It just kept going. It was getting all through '73 just about, because then we put out Sing and Yesterday Once More, and the Now and Then album did so well. But Top of the World, it just didn't let up. And finally I said, this is it, and then we redid it a little, but it wouldn't, I'm sure that record would have gone to #1 in 1972. And of course, that's one of the, it's a big mistakes that I made, because the Song for You album sold only about 2 million, because it never had, at the time of its release, a super big hit. It had fairly good hits, but one of the big ones was Hurting Each Other. Well, that came out before the album was done. And Top of the World, which was the other super big one off that album, because Goodbye to Love did all right, and It's Going to Take Some Time, that did all right. I Won't Last Without Day Without You, that was even later. That did all right, but the two biggest were Hurting Each Other, which preceded it, and Top of the World, which came out, oh my God, about 14 or 15 months later. Yeah. So that album, for as good as it is, never did quite as well. I know at Top of the World come out, say, in June of 72, that album would have gone through the roof instead of just number 4. Well, we when it comes to image and album sleeves and what we were wearing then, I think, of course, what we were wearing then, the kids are wearing now. But the average person, again, getting back to this famous average person, looks at a picture in their yearbook and looks at their hair and their dress and think, ay, ay, ay. The difference is a yearbook's one thing, and an album cover that sold something like 8 million and is still in release, that's another. But there's only so much you can do. You look back at a lot of the, any time period, but let's take the 70s. Ay, ay, ay. It's not only what we were wearing, it's what a whole number of us were wearing. All the different acts. Oh, man, you look at some of the R&B acts and some of those album covers, and just any number of different acts. And that's what I mean. You would think that when it comes to, and I even know bell bottoms, of course, were on there. They weren't new in the late 60s and into the, everything old is new again. But some of the stuff, like the polyester, you really think we would have learned about polyester, and it's back. So, maybe I shouldn't be quite as critical as I am. The image, that was a problem, because the record label and really everyone around us did not know how to market us. And in a way, you could say you can't blame them, because the last successful, really successful, brother and sister act was Fred and Adele Astaire. And of course, it wasn't records, and there were no album covers. It was a whole different thing. And well, then there were the two of us, and they just didn't know what to do. And I was, at least I had an inkling, and I was fighting with the label. The thing any disharmony at the record label was over the album covers and the PR shots. We're young. You're trying to make everybody happy. We didn't grow up on the streets of New York or play coffee houses, or we weren't seasoned. We weren't. We were a couple of young kids from the burbs, and it's pretty much yes and no, sir, and you do what people tell you to do, especially if they're in a position, where you pretty much report to them, or they're your seniors, and we let a lot of things get by. They always say smile for the camera, and as soon as you don't smile, it's what's wrong. You look angry, which at times I do when I'm not smiling, so please smile. And then keep smiling. And, it's supposed to be an 8x10, so put your damn cheeks together. Well, I said, guys, we're brother and sister. It's not good. And I lost. And I remember fighting over the Close to You album. They repackaged Offering. Offering had a dismal cover, but at least it was a period piece. There was a sunflower growing on the lot. And the photographer picked it up, yanked it out, gave it to Karen, but it was very 60s. And of course, I saw a thing just the other day that said, I think it said, now let's scowl for the camera. It was talking about how all these new groups go out of their way, and so did some of the rock groups back in the 60s and early 70s, but to scowl at the camera. And it showed different examples of these big acts. They're all scowling at the camera. But I said it was 69, and we weren't about to smile, and we scowled at the camera. So in a way, even though it was shot up, and it was called by one DJ the nasal shot, the Offering cover, which I know most people haven't seen, at least we weren't smiling, and it's very 60s. Karen's holding that sunflower, but it didn't look like the two of us. There's something about the picture. So, I mean, I look Asian. Karen looks like she has an allergy. It's not good. So when Close to You takes off in July and August of 70, the record company comes and asks if they couldn't repackage and retitle. And since Ticket to Ride had enjoyed a modicum of success, could they repackage and retitle Offering as Ticket to Ride? And we were working up at Tahoe at the time. They rented a sailboat, beautiful thing. We went out to Tahoe. We just had on T-shirts and jeans. We weren't close to each other. They took a shot. It was terrific. That should have been the Close to You cover. They put it in Ticket to Ride. When Close to You comes, it's time for the session. They run us up to this vice president I was telling you about, who talked us out of Top of the World. He said, we're going to dress you properly this time. So he takes me to Mr. Guy, which is his fashionable boutique in Beverly Hills. I don't know where the earth he took Karen. He got her a gown. He got me, it was a very nice, I'm sure, I mean, our royalties took care of it, but he selected a cashmere blazer, very nice, and this very nice shirt. And it was all very dressy, and Karen's in a gown. And out we go with the photographer the next day or so to Palos Verdes. Now, that's a beach here and a beach community. It's a city by the beach. And it was overcast. The photographer puts us out on a rock. The waves are crashing over the rocks. Karen's hair were damp, frizzing. It was, and I saw a couple of amateur photographers. I remember this very well, and they were taking the very same picture, like 50 feet away from us, but they're amateurs. And I remember bitching at the photographer. Right? They said, "What the hell are you doing?" First off, there's nothing original about this whatsoever, nothing. And secondly, it doesn't even make any sense, because why would you put on a cashmere jacket and a gown and leather boots and dress slacks and sit on a rock by the beach? Why would you do this? And I remember thinking, it can't be good. It can't be good. It wasn't good. We were working on, again, trying to get this album done a few days later, working on one of the album cuts, and in comes the vice president with the picture. And after being so unhappy with the Offering shot, of course, we didn't say anything. We told ourselves, especially now that we had a hit, we're going to say something if we don't like this. And he says, how do you like it? And we said, of course, we didn't like it at all. We don't like it. And he said, learn to live with it. That was it. Management wasn't there. That's what I mean. We're paying all this dough to management. It shouldn't even have been brought to us. It should have gone to management, who immediately, if it had been Brian Epstein, would have said, this sucks, guys. Let's start over. Management wasn't even there. We were really, in that way, not handled well at all. And out it came, and it's dreadful. And, of course, that's what kicked off that whole image thing right there. It's dreadful. And album after album. I remember a song for you. It's it's an attractive album cover, but it has a heart on it. Like this rock heart. And again, we're in with this guy, and I'm saying, Gil, it looks like a Valentine's card. This isn't good. But, it wasn't in our contract then. So all you could do is bitch. Now and then. Oh, my God. We're coming off an album that's, so I don't know how many, couple of million. We're going on what's going to sell many, many millions more. And it's always up at A&M. Like, oh, yeah, our biggest act, we have to get a picture of him. Because so many people up at the lot, on the whole, they didn't like the fact that they liked the money that was coming in, but they didn't want to know that we were on their label. They were always after something hipper, much hipper in their minds. So it's yeah, we have to take a picture of those too. Okay, so we'll send a photographer down to the house. And you two, so they show up and they, it's like, stand out in front of the door. Stand out in front of your door. Stand out in front of your front door. God, I wish I had a tape recorder going for all these things. I said to him, you're kidding me. They hadn't given it any thought at all. Their biggest act, who sells all these albums worldwide, they hadn't even thought about it. It's like, oh yeah, we better they're making an album, that we've been pestering them for. We better put a cover on it, And so they said, stand out in front of the front door and we'll shoot your picture. I'm kidding. I kid you not. I said, you mean like our mother would do? You mean like a snapshot to go on the book? We're supposed to stand in front of this? And I said, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And I said, you better think something. Oh, no. I mean, it's coming out whenever it's coming out. We have to have this. And so after all the bitching and griping and all right, we got in the Ferrari. And and if you look at that, you can tell I am pissed off. If you look at the cover of that album, I am pissed off. I mean, I am not smiling on that album cover. All they did was get us coming down the street and shot us with me driving the car. That was it. Then, to make it worse, they said, we're going to make this, it's going to be more of an artistic statement. We're going to paint the picture. We're going to have the picture painted. Because if you look at that album, it's, it folds out 3 ways and all. That was a lot of money to make it. But it's a painting of a picture. By then, of course, it's one of these things where we're in the mix room and then out onto the road. So we couldn't even look at what they came up with until we're out on the road. And they sent it. And it was wrong. There's this one thing, if you look at the cover, where the Ferrari Daytona has a vent window. And it so happens the way they took it, it cuts Karen's face in half. So, I mean, it's anything. And again, if management had anything to say, they said, what the hell are you taking a picture of Karen? Forget painting it. If you just had the picture with Karen cutting your star's face in half. Then, when they went to paint it, they just couldn't get this part matched with the other part. And we'd send it back, and they'd send another, and we'd send it back, and they'd send another. And it's not right to this day. They finally got that part right, but then they took and painted 8x10s of us from a previous photo session. And Karen still, she never had an overbite. You look at this thing, it looks like she's a chipmunk. It's dreadful. And that's my biggest thing, my biggest regret is that I didn't finally just say that, if this doesn't stop, we're just not going to cut any more records for you guys. It was absolutely disgusting the way they treated us, and that we didn't stand up to management and say, you get the hell out. We're getting someone who actually looks after us rather than just book us. That's my biggest complaint. So all of this really plays into the image. I mean, as I said in this PBS documentary that we did, I couldn't actually blame some of what the critics said when you look at this, not the music necessarily, but these album covers and publicity stills. They're horrible. Horrible. So if you look at Horizon, that I finally did put my foot down. So we both look pissed off on that one. But at least our cheeks aren't together and we're not smiling.